We had a surprise depth chart. The Falcons and Dolphins will play in NFL preseason week 1 this Friday. And as always, teams drop a depth chart prior to each game. And I kind of wanted to talk about the first one for the Dolphins because it was a little surprising. And anytime we get to see a depth chart from the Fins, it at least piques my interest, and it should as well for you. But before we get into that depth chart and my biggest takeaways from it, make sure you are subscribed to the channel because we are going to be live for every game that the Miami Dolphins play this season, but we will specifically be live for this one on Friday. Make sure you subscribe and join us. We're going to be live an hour before the game. It's a 7 p.m. Eastern time game, so 6 p.m. Eastern time is when we'll be live. Make sure you subscribe and join us because we have daily coverage of the Dolphins, and we'll be live for every single game. All right, the first takeaway from the initial depth chart from the Miami Dolphins is the offensive line shuffle. We know there's been some injuries and some question marks on who's going to start with this group, but the first Dolphins depth chart kind of gave us a little bit of a clue. No surprise at left tackle, center, or right tackle. Austin Jackson is always going to be the starting right tackle. Aaron Brewer was always going to be the starting center, and Teron Armstead's always going to be the left tackle. But with no Isaiah Wynn, as he is still on the PUP list, Robert Jones, who we thought is going to be the starting right guard, actually is listed as the starting left guard, which means backup center, Liam Eichenberg, is actually listed as the starting right guard. And this is a little bit intriguing to me because we've often talked about the battle for the starting right guard spot when Isaiah Wynn's healthy. It was going to be between Lester Cotton, Liam Eichenberg, Jack Driscoll, and Robert Jones. But to see Liam Eichenberg technically get that nod at right guard when Robert Jones is over at left guard kind of showcases to me that he might be in the driver's seat to be that second guy. And maybe he's not the driver's seat to be the starting right guard. I'd still probably lean Robert Jones since we've seen him get left guard reps and be the Isaiah Wynn replacement for now, if you will. But with Jack Driscoll, that's the crazy thing to me. I've thought that he could be the person who comes out and emerges from the pack to be your starting right guard. But the fact that he is behind Liam Eichenberg as the starting right guard right now at this portion in camp tells me a lot. And we know that he has struggled a little bit. He's gotten reps at center. He's gotten reps at right guard. He just has not performed to what I expected him to do in the first 2 weeks of camp, which has kind of put him a little bit behind here on the depth chart. But outside of the interior, there was no crazy thing that I wanted to talk about, but I did want to address the interior offensive line because Robert Jones is at left guard, Liam Eichenberg's at right guard, Jack Driscoll there, but then Lester Cotton, who's probably going to be the person who is the odd man out on the roster bubble, was listed as the third right guard. Let's talk about the edge lineup now because it's interesting. Obviously, the depth chart's not include anybody on the PUP list or on the IR because they technically aren't able to, but it was intriguing to see how they fared. No surprise, Emmanuel Ogbah is your number one edge who was signed right after the Shaq Barrett retirement that came out a couple weeks ago. Quentin Bell, though, has been an absolute revelation for the Miami Dolphins, as listed as that opposite starting edge to Emmanuel Ogbah. Chop Robinson, Mo Kamara, the two rookies, are listed right behind Ogbah in that edge one department. And then you see Brown and Grayson Murphy, the UDFA, listed behind Quentin Bell. But the part that we do need to talk about is the fact that Bell is listed as the starting edge and outside linebacker opposite to Emmanuel Ogbah over Chop Robinson. And maybe it's a rookie thing, maybe it's not, but Bell has been absolutely spectacular through this point at camp. No one thought he even was going to have a shot to make this roster. He's been the second or third best edge with Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb out, probably slightly ahead of Chop Robinson, if we're going to be honest, in terms of production and his ability to flash against the Falcons, flash against his own teammates. Like, Quentin Bell has been really, really good, and I've honestly just been overall very impressed with the Dolphins' edge group to this point. Whenever you lose guys like Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, who are probably both top 15 at the position, or at least top 20, like, you expect your pass rush to be lacking in training camp against your own guys and against the other team. But that's not been the case. They've been able to get after the quarterback between Ogbah, Chop, and Quentin Bell, completely spaced there for some reason. They have been able to get pressure at the quarterback, and when you start to integrate Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb back into this rotation, this is going to be an extremely deep group, and I expect it to be one of the best pass rushes in all of football. I think it's kind of a lock almost at this point. It would take Quentin Bell really, really to drop off in his production and the rest of camp to not make the team. That's just how good he has been. But let me know. Predict it for me. Will Quentin Bell end up being on the final 53-man roster? I don't see a way he's not, so I'm typing my Ys, but type your Ys or Ns down below. Let's talk about running back Jaylen Wright now, because he's kind of buried on this depth chart, and it's a little bit of a shock to me. I don't know if it's because he's a rookie. I don't know the exact reason, but when you look at how the Dolphins listed things early on, no surprise that you have Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane as your top two backs, but then Jeff Wilson was listed as RB3, Chris Brooks as RB4, with Selvin Ahmed listed as RB5, and Jaylen Wright as RB6. Like, I am very, very surprised that the fourth-round pick, the rookie out of Tennessee, is listed as the last running back on this depth chart. And no, this is not me saying that Jaylen Wright is not going to make this team because he's the last listed running back on the depth chart. It's not what I'm saying whatsoever. But it is intriguing to me that maybe the Dolphins don't feel as he is ready quite yet to have the role that many of us expected he would have. Does that open the door for Jeff Wilson to make this team that we didn't expect that to be the case? I'm not so sure. It's very early. There's still 2 preseason games, still a damn near month to go until September 8th when this season gets underway against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I'm not going to try to overreact just yet, but it is something that I am definitely taking away from the first depth chart that the Dolphins released. I mentioned that the Dolphins are about a month away from the season getting underway. Well, if you want to catch the Fins in person this year, there's no other way to do it than using GameTime, the best ticking app on the market. It's the one that I use. It's the one that producer Jack Latteray uses. The entire Chat Sports office uses GameTime because it's simply the best. You can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you know exactly where you were sitting in your venue, whether it be a sporting event, a concert, a comedy show, theater. It does not matter. You can get last-minute deals and the best ticket prices at GameTime, and use code ChatSports to get $20 off when you download the app and create an account for your first purchase. Yes, it is just first purchase, but there are so many better advantages to using GameTime than there is other ticketing apps, and it's the reason why I love using GT. So like I said, you can get $20 off your first purchase when you download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code ChatSports. Terms do apply, but make sure you create that account and redeem code CHATSPORTS to get $20 off. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Appreciate GameTime for sponsoring today's show. All right, let's go to the tight end department. Durham Smythe, tight end 1? Kind of a shock to me, but that's how it was listed in the first depth chart by the Miami Dolphins. Smythe was listed as the number 1 guy, and kind of in a stunning move if you're asking me. Jonnu Smith is your tight end 2, which I did not see coming because I think he's clearly been the best tight end for this Dolphins team so far in camp. Julian Hill listed as tight end 3. My sweet prince, Jody Fortson Jr. at tight end 4. The standout Tanner Connor, who has had a really good camp thus far, at tight end 5. And then Hayden Rucci, the UDFA out of Wisconsin, that last guy in this group. But the main takeaway that I have to discuss here is the fact that Jonnu Smith isn't tight end 1. And I know Durham Smythe has been the tight end 1 last season. He was the tight end 2 years ago with Mike Gesicki, and he's the more experienced tight end on this group. But I just don't see a way that Jonnu Smith isn't tight end 1 on this team. He has the most experience, the most production in his career. He's one of the best yards after the catch tight end in the NFL. I think he actually is the best one. That's my personal opinion. There are some stats that back that up as well. And I know there's going to be a lot made out of Jody Fortson being the 4th guy, Julian Hill being the 3rd guy. But I'm really just focused on Smythe being ahead of Jonnu Smith. But like I have mentioned a couple times, we are very early in the training camp process. Things will absolutely change. But Smythe being listed at tight end 1 might make you think there's going to be a good chance that he is on this roster when we get to cut down day in late August. Last takeaway we got to mention, the wide receiver battle here. And there's been so many injuries to this position group already. Odell Beckham Jr. is on the PUP list. Taj Washington placed on IR. Eric Ezukama banged up as well. But when you looked at the first release of the depth chart, there's some intriguing things we have to talk about. No surprise at the top with Hill and Waddle. Barrios at number 3 due to the fact, well, OBJ isn't there. River Craycraft listed as wide receiver 4, which makes a lot of sense due to the fact that he's been an extremely good, productive player in the first 2 weeks of camp. Newly signed Willie Snead, wide receiver 5. How about that? Schwartz 6, Braylon Sanders 7, Ezukama 8, puts him really behind the 8 ball. But then this is the player we got to talk about. My guy, Malik Washington. 6th round pick out of Virginia, who I have been very bullish on, saying that he's going to have a role for the Dolphins this year in the slot with his shiftiness and his ability to just catch everything over the middle of the field. Like I said, with another player in Jaylen Wright. I don't know if it's the rookie thing. I don't know what it is, if they put rookies a little bit lower than they do usually. But either way, Malik Washington being the 8th wide receiver, mention? Like, what are we doing here? He is going to be good. I hope a lot of things here, but I think that he is a lot higher on the depth chart than they're actually letting on, and I expect to see him ball out over the next couple weeks in these preseason games, but that's a little bit of a shock to me. Last name I did want to mention, we talked about it a little bit, but River Craycraft has had such an excellent camp over the first 2 weeks that having him as wide receiver 4 with injuries to OBJ makes a ton of sense, right? So normally OBJ would be 3, Craycraft would be 5, Barrios 4, which is fine by me if Malik Washington is wide receiver 6, because I don't think there's any way in hell that it would be a smart move to cut Malik Washington because another team would scoop him up. That's definitely my thoughts there. But Craycraft has had a really good camp, so it doesn't shock me to see him in the top 4 with OBJ currently on the PUP list. I know we didn't show every single position group, but we only showed the top 5 in terms of shocking to me. Like, there's not that big of a surprise at inside linebacker, cornerback, safety, quarterback. So to me, I only want to talk about the 5 groups that really stood out to me. So what was your one-word reaction to the Dolphins depth chart, or at least the pieces that we showed you on today's video? My one word, early. I've kind of said that a couple times throughout this video, but that's kind of how I'm viewing this, right? There's just so much time until now in the final cutdown day. There's going to be 3 preseason games, more training camp practices, where there's going to be a lot of time for players to either climb up the depth chart or fall down the depth chart. So I would expect Malik Washington and Jaylen Wright, who we talked about being a little too low, as 2 rookies that I thought could really have an impact on this team. Well, there's a lot of time for them to make up on that ground. And it wouldn't shock me in a week when we're maybe doing another Dolphins depth chart video that Malik Washington and Jaylen Wright are much higher on this list. So that's my one word, a little early. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel because we are going to have the best coverage here on YouTube, in my opinion, when it comes to the Dolphins. Multiple videos a day at points. Videos every single day, that's for sure, but sometimes 2. Also live for every single game, including this one on Friday night against the Atlanta Falcons. So hit that sub button and join us here because we're going to have the best coverage over the next year.